welcome back to Former Fundy, where at long last we are doing another Sunday Scaries. And I figured, what better topic than to return back to my favorite Fundy with his freaky fears of witches and odd political tangents, Greg Locke. Let's see what he's been doing while I've been away.
But we still get so many people that want to interview me about my red-hot political statements. They're like, oh, you know, we about to go into 2024. And I tell them, I don't care. If they want me to stand up and to say a word, here's what they need to know. If God tells me to do it, I promise you, my word will be for Jesus, not for any candidate. So some of y'all are going to get past, or at least if you're going to stick around, you're going to have to get past the notion that because we're coming into an important year that I'm about to amp things up. Oh, I am, but I'm not amping it up on politics. I'm not.
Wow. I'm actually really proud of him. Maybe I picked the wrong topic. I mean, surely now there's not really going to be much to comment on or react to from him since he's decided to cool off and stay away from politics. Let's just get a feel to see how well he handled that.
That is a Bible that is duct taped and zip tied to an Easton ball bat. So maybe at our Global Vision store, we ought to start selling some Bible bats in the name of Jesus.
You know what just screams, I'm not going to get into crazy right-wing politics anymore? Appearing on InfoWars.
You want to see my war face? When I hear the Israel debate that's going on, here's my frustration, and I think the younger generation's frustration is, it's like, here we are talking about a foreign country again. I grew up in a city where I was literally, my first experience going downtown, homeless, degradation, decaying infrastructure, poverty, crime. And I'm just like, I'm sick of hearing about a foreign country, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Israel. And then it doesn't help when we hear things like, oh, it's your biblical duty to support Israel. So I think that, you know, from the younger generation's perspective, do you think that you can even change our minds? I mean, I'll tell you, I don't think you can.
Right.
This breaks my heart so much, but it does really come to the differing values that you tend to see on the right versus the left. For the most part, people who are more left-leaning, they're like center. Oh, that was an interesting camera glitch. The circle of who they care about tends to expand out a lot further than on the right or the conservative side, where that circle tends to be very, very small, down to like friends, family, or maybe people who think the same way as them. So this seems a little harsh to say, but research kind of backs it up that there's just more compassion happening on the left side of things. And I'm not talking about political parties, but I'm talking about more like the individual people who subscribe to certain types of political views. But it just, to hear him talk about how the younger generation is just like, you know, like people are dying in Ukraine, why do we care? People are dying in Gaza, why do we care? And I just can't imagine. So it's one thing to be numb. So the way that we're bombarded with all of this information, it is very easy to become numb. But it's another thing to just, excuse me, it's another thing to just be like, oh, I don't care. Why do I care? Oh, whatever. You know, like they're not from my country, or they're not my, you know, ethnicity, or they don't speak my language, they don't believe the same way as I do, so I don't care if they're being killed en masse. That's just horrific. And it's hard for me not to think poorly about somebody who genuinely does not care that innocent people are losing their lives. I think the opposite of like love and caring, it's not hate, it's apathy. It's when we genuinely just do not give a shit about other people. And I find that very icky. And while I can get being more concerned about the poverty and infrastructure issues that you do see locally, are you doing anything to help that? Because you sure as hell are not supporting policies that are going to help that.
I don't know if it's all about changing your minds, but as you know, the media has so lied. People don't understand what really is going on in Israel, Gaza, with the Houthis, whatever. They've been so lied to, and TikTok has done such a good or poor job, however you want to look at it, of propagating a false narrative that the gap is almost too big to bridge at this point. It's a huge chasm.
What do you view as the false narrative?
Well, I mean, obviously, the number of people, first of all, that live in Gaza has been skewed. We get those numbers from Hamas because...
So you think it's less than 1 million?
Yeah, well, it's 1.5 million, but they say 2.2 million. Okay. But, the more people they say they have, then obviously the more money they get from other governments and from the UN and things like that. And then all the death tolls are strictly coming from Hamas. Listen, when the wolf gets to tell the story, the sheep and the shepherd are always the bad guys.
This is such a good example of the two very, very different views in the right wing on Israel. Because you've got your fundamental and evangelicals who are very pro, and then you've got your anti-Semitic conspiracy side, the Jews are running everything. And it's interesting to have them in the same party, especially with the horrific things happening in Gaza right now. And I will just say now, genocide is not okay. And being a victim of a genocide in the past, in your history, does not give you the right to then conduct your own on another group just because you don't like them.
Here's my interpretation. Here's what I hear. And again, I don't like making any blanket statements,
sure,
but just for the sake of this short conversation, I'll speak in generalities.
Yep.
What I'm hearing is, it sounds to me like you're getting a different transmission than what I'm getting. I'm getting a transmission that not only are Gazans starving, they're getting shot when they go to get aid. Right. And there's videos that I see that prove that. I'm also getting in the transmission that Israel is basically just carpet bombing the whole thing because they don't want to send people in on the ground, because they don't want to go into the tunnels and get blown up. They don't want to risk the IDF's lives. Sure. So they just figure blow it all up, go and clear out the rubble, and that's how they can deal with Hamas. And so it just seems like we're getting totally different transmissions. And so when I hear something like that, I'm like, that sounds like corporate media propaganda that has been fed to older generations for their entire lives, versus the transmission I'm getting is from social media and videos. And so it's like we're getting two totally different transmissions right now.
Well,
there's always a little bit of frustration when you agree with something a nut job says, but I guess, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Definitely getting a lot of different transmissions from social media and all of that, because people aren't actually there. None of these people that are doing these videos, and the ones where the people are, there's been so much just debunked, right? There are people getting shot to get aid, but Hamas is shooting them. You'd think with everybody there that has a camera, they would at least show us a bunch of videos of IDF people shooting civilians. But what they're showing us is Hamas shooting civilians, and then them saying this is the IDF that are shooting
Hamas
civilians.
Is killing.
And why do you think that? Is it because you say so? Is it because it fits in with your personal narrative that Israel can do no wrong? Because that's not what it seems to be portrayed as. And it seems... Let's apply Occam's razor, okay? Is it going to be propaganda from a bunch of independent social media people posting about stuff? Or is it going to be propaganda from government controlled news sources? It would take a lot more coordination to have a bunch of independent social media people. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it seems a lot more likely that Israel would potentially be lying for their best interest than a bunch of independent journalists and personalities and creators all reporting on the same atrocities.
So we agree that somebody's killing people when they go to aid. You think that's Hamas?
Oh, 100%. I believe it's Hamas. 100%. There's no doubt about it, because I know too many people that are boots on the ground in Gaza right now, and they're like, look, what is being said is a lie. Now, I told the government of Israel when I sat down with a number of them, I said, look, you guys are losing the social media battle. You're losing it because the young people do not believe it, because what they see is all of this Hamas propaganda. Hamas is a huge propagandist machine.
Greg told the government of Israel? I need to look into this. When did he sit down with a number of them? And if that is true, what? Like, who is he that he has that kind of power as a whack job pastor from Tennessee to speak to prominent members of the government of Israel? So either he's lying, or what the actual fuck? You know, that would say a lot if the government of Israel was being advised by Greg Locke. Maybe the Gazans are all witches.
You don't think Israel has more powerful propaganda than Hamas?
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. No, I don't think they have. I don't think they're putting the money in the propaganda.
I forgot about the Hamas American super PAC that buys all of our Congress.
Well, it's not the Hamas American super PAC, but there's no doubt that the Islamic regime is putting more money into the propaganda of the videos than Israel, because Israel's not trying to fight from a social media standpoint.
The Hamas American super PAC? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Greg thought something like that actually existed. I mean, according to his Twitter, and no, I will not call it the other name. No, nor will I actually log in, because fuck that. I'm going to use Knitter instead. But as you can see here, he's got some AI slop implying that Candace Owens is receiving money from Iran. Okay. I mean, I do know of a situation where a bunch of creators were being funded by a foreign government, but it was Russia, and it was conservative influencers. So where's the conspiracy really happening, Greg? Mystery. I guess it's just a big old mystery.
They're trying to fight the ground game.
I think a lot of things get misinterpreted, and you know, I saw the comments, and I guess this is how you ended up coming in and doing the show with Alex today too, when you were speaking at a conference about Candace and everything. And I think that all these different dissenting voices kind of get lumped into one, whether it's Candace or Fuentes or even Alex at times, or myself or others. And I think there's a lot of different things here. Like, I don't want to involve with any of them. Honestly, I'm sick of Israel. I'm sick of the Palestinians. I'm sick of all of them. I got my own problems in my country. I've grown up in a country where every metropolitan area is decaying. Yeah. I see our money just being shipped overseas without any resistance, but we can't even get a tax cut passed.
Oh, we just got a nice tax cut passed. It's going to be so great for the country, especially when, you know, so many people lose access to their health care. But you know what? All of the richest people get to keep their tax cuts. How nice. That's going to be just really, really great. Really great for just everyone. Now, I do want to take a little break just to talk about something So one thing that I've seen a lot is just this like fuck around and find out rhetoric. And as much as I understand the sentiment and even agree with the sentiment to some extent, I think we need to be a little bit kinder to people who are having their eyes opened to what they voted for. Because people really do crave community and belonging. And so for those people who are now realizing that what they asked for and what they voted for isn't very suited for them, shaming them is not going to help them correct their behavior. Shame has never been a very good way to healthily correct behavior. It would be much better to commiserate with the struggles that they are now going through and then offer alternate ideas and solutions and help, kind of bring them in to more progressive ideas and more humanist ideas. Now, there are some people who are just too far. I'm not saying they're hopeless, but like there's a lot of stuff that they're going to have to work through mentally before something like that would be helpful to them. But to the person who is now lamenting because they no longer have health care, or who are lamenting because their kids are no longer getting free school lunches and, they cannot financially afford that, it's going to be a lot more effective to bring that person into positive community than it is to shame them.
So it's like, this is where my frustration comes from. I think this is where the younger generation frustration comes from. But even if you want to get into the Israel issue, I think there's fundamental questions where even we may have a difference. Like, who are the Jews?
Right. Well, the Jews are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, 100%. Me and Alex even talked about it. People are like, well, we just believe they're fake Jews. It just doesn't work that way, because here's one of the reasons that the chasm between what we believe cannot be narrowed, especially in 30 minutes, because I'm going to come solely from a theological standpoint, and you're going to see it solely from a either media infused or
a political, I would say, political,
standpoint,
100%,
which is fine, which I understand. But I'm going to see things totally different, because obviously I think we ought to be America first. But I also understand the fact that God says that America will be blessed if we do stand with, to some great degree, the Jewish people.
This is where I think we come into an issue, because I from my perspective, and I don't know, you may disagree, but it seems to me on the right wing, especially with electing Donald Trump twice, we all agree that America is heading in the wrong direction. I think we all agree that. So
who's we all? Because I looked at the election numbers. Trump did not win by majority. He won by a plurality. There are more people who did not vote than people who voted for him. So if we look at this and see the number of people who voted for Trump, the number of people who voted for Kamala, and the number of people who did not vote at all, if that group that didn't vote at all, if that was a candidate that they voted for instead, that candidate would have won. So more people were not invested in voting, or did not feel morally comfortable voting for the selections that were available, which is their right. In a democracy, you have the right to vote or not to vote. But saying that we all is not accurate, because if you look at the numbers, more people overall did not vote for Trump than did vote for Trump.
So how can we claim that we've been blessed for supporting Israel all these years when clearly America has suffered since we've been supporting Israel?
America has suffered because we've had some lousy leadership, no doubt about that. But
they all supported Israel?
As far as the politics...
They all supported Israel, every single one of them.
They said they did.
Name a president that didn't go and kiss the Wailing Wall.
Joe Biden was not very friendly
That's
towards
not
the
what he
Jewish
asked.
people. He would have done everything he could.
That wasn't the question.
And what's that?
Name a president that didn't kiss the Wailing Wall.
Oh, I have no idea on who did or did not kiss the Wailing Wall. JFK.
Only one.
Okay.
We all know what happened to him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm just saying there is no proof to say that us supporting Israel has blessed a country.
I don't believe that. I think that's crazy. We are the economic superpower of the world.
Then why aren't my cities better than the cities in the Gulf nation states?
Because we have bad leadership. That's not an Israel
Because our
problem.
leadership puts Israel first.
I don't believe that. No, it's not true.
That's always, tactic number one when you're losing when you're losing like a conversation or a debate or whatever, just move the goalposts. If the Bible says that we'll prosper if we support Israel, and then it's brought up that we have a history of supporting Israel, but we're not prospering in the way that they feel like we should be, well, it's because they didn't support Israel enough. They didn't truly support Israel with all of their hearts. It's very much the no true Scotsman fallacy, which Christians are just super prone to, because that's always the first thing that you hear Christians or want to be apologists, some official apologists too, say to people who were former Christians who deconstructed or left the faith. It's always, well, you're not a true Christian, or you never truly had a relationship with Christ. And it's like, yes, I did. I was wholeheartedly a Christian, and I did a lot more than the average Christian does for their faith. And so a lot of the people who would make that accusation towards me are a lot of them are the type of people who, when I was a Christian, I would have pointed to them and said they aren't a true Christian. And I would have, had all my reasons, whether it was, they're not going out and making disciples of all nations, or they're not taking care of the poor and hungry. For example, they're the type that Jesus would say, "Depart from me, I never knew you, because when I was hungry, you didn't feed me, and when I was naked, you didn't clothe me." And so all of these people are the types of people that I would have said, well, they're not truly Christian, or they have a lot that they need to grow in their faith, or I would be worried for their salvation. And it's also so commonly applied anytime one group of Christians does not support or endorse something that another group or denomination is doing. I think the most common for this is how a lot of Christians will point towards Catholics and say, oh, well, Catholics aren't Christian because they worship saints and Mary, but they don't worship them. They venerate them. It's different. And I'll admit, when I was a Christian, I was in the belief that most Catholics were probably not on their way to heaven because they didn't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I didn't come from a negative or condemning viewpoint for that. It was a genuine concern for their souls. And I felt that there were probably Catholics who were on their way to heaven because they had genuine relationships with Jesus, but I had a tendency to look at all of the ritual and repetitiveness, and I saw that as a lack of relationship with God. And so it would make me concerned about their salvation, their souls. And I would want to share Jesus with them. And so when you have that kind of fallacy already so baked into your thinking, it makes it so easy to apply it everywhere else. Now, I am not a debater in any sense. If I was in a debate, I would do a horrible job. I would clam up. So I'm not condemning anyone for falling into fallacies in when they're put on the spot or in the moment, but it's just a fallacy I see so often. And I think it's the type of thing that even if you're not a debater, it's good to learn, because then you can start to see in debates or just conversations like this when people are doing things that are intentionally or unintentionally intellectually dishonest. And it helps you unpack and realize, okay, yes, I was maybe emotionally moved by this debate because the person was very passionate and they were saying the things that I agree with. But it lets you kind of take a step back and detach and be like, well, they didn't really handle this logically, or they kept moving the goalposts when they were challenged. And so I don't think everybody needs to be debaters or become super hyper logical or anything, but I think a base knowledge of these things can be really helpful just to protect yourself from just falling for misinformation.
But this is what you're arguing. You're saying because we support Israel, it's blessed America, but now you're saying America's not blessed because of our bad leadership that supports America.
No, America's blessed. So there's no way around that. We're a superpower, politically. We're a superpower economically. We're a superpower militarily. But I'm telling you, we would be just like any other normal nation had we not stood and had an alliance with them for all of these years. Look at all the other nations that have stood against Israel. It hasn't boded very well for them. We just know how the end looks. And the end looks, every nation, Zechariah 12:9 says, every nation that fights against Israel, the Bible says, it's very graphic, God will burn their eyes out.
Here's what I say, and my stance politically is I want to completely decouple from the Middle East. I think it's been a disaster for the American people, and that's what my concern is. But tell me if you agree or disagree with this. Okay. As you do care about Israel. I believe in your heart of hearts you
absolutely.
Do. I'll be honest, I really don't.
Okay.
If you do care about Israel, wouldn't you agree that you need new leadership? Because to me, I mean, would you disagree that the whole world has turned against Israel right now?
They are in the process of turning against Israel. But again, prophetically, they have to. God promises us in the Bible that that's going to happen, that all nations are eventually going to hate Israel. So my question is, for the years, how in the world is this ever going to transpire? But now we see exactly how it's transpired. They're being painted so evil and wicked and nefarious. Now the world hates Israel. But you look at that and you're like, okay, so we should hate them too. I look at it and I'm like, you know what? They're in the perfect spot for God to fulfill exactly what he said he was going to do.
And there it is. This isn't about actually caring about any of them. This is about end times prophecy, because Israel has to exist to fulfill biblical prophecy. And in biblical prophecy, before the end times, one of the signs is that Israel will have enemies surrounding her.
I don't hate anybody. What I see is Israel can get whatever they need from us without even a vote, but I can't even get a tax cut. And I think that there's no doubt, whether it's 40,000 or 400,000 Palestinians, people don't like what they've seen in Palestine. I think that that's a fact. And you might disagree, but the consensus now is that Israel stood down on October 7th and let the attack happen because Netanyahu wants to take the Gaza Strip. So I think the world is turning against Israel, not because of a painted picture. I think it's because of the reality. I think it's because of what they're seeing.
They're going to take the Gaza Strip because the Bible fulfills the fact that one day Gaza is going to be repopulated with nothing but Jews. Again, you can't get around that fact.
I'm so tempted. I'm so tempted right now to steal apologies for the Bible tells me so jingle. I'm gonna do it. I'm sure he won't be mad. It's just, I guess that's where we're gonna wrap it up. I know this wasn't a Sunday sermon, but it, I think, was a nice place to just kind of catch up with Greg Locke and see how he's been doing after he promised he was going to be less political. That went very well. Good job, Greg. Good job. And so I am going to sign off here and say goodbye. I hope you'll tune in next time and continue to tune in. If you enjoy the content that I make, I ask that you would please subscribe, like the video, leave me a comment, maybe give me like a nice possum emoji down in the bottom there. I love my possums, especially possum memes. And then go ahead and click to share the video and copy the link. You don't have to send it off to anyone, but it tricks the algorithm into thinking that my content is worth sharing, and it will make it more likely that it shares it and pushes that out to more people. All right, bye. I cannot fucking do this.